Shalom everyone, and today we're studying Parashat Koraḥ. Parashat Koraḥ is in the book of Numbers, chapter 16. Parashat Koraḥ follows Parashat Shlach Lecha, the story of the spies, and Koraḥ is another version of the same story. Now, what is the story? I'll say it later on, but you have to remember Korah was a person, a human being. He was Moses' cousin. He was a very rich man, the richest of them all. In the whole nation, he was the richest. Till today, when you want to say in Hebrew somebody is richer than imagination can go for, you say Ashir keKorah, rich as Korah. This is the Hebrew expression. Uh, he was wise, he was holy, he was knowledgeable, he had the Holy Spirit. And through the Holy Spirit, he saw that one of his descendants will be as great as Moses and Aaron. Prophet Shmuel, Samuel the prophet, who anointed King Shaul and then King David, was the descendant of Korah. So we're talking about how could a person that is uh, noble, rich, wise, important, famous, he had everything that any human being can think about. How could he fall that much? So we are not talking about Korah. We're talking about Korah not as gossip, okay? Like talking last week about Steve Jobs. It's not gossiping about one person. It's about taking the story, the legacy of a person and saying, what's in it for me? Why? Especially about Korah. What is there for me to understand? Because especially if there is a parasha after Korah in the Torah, it means there's a very important message to me, because if we are talking about Korah as a person that lived in one as a human being, the person, the individual in time and space, so what's in it for me? It's thousands and thousands of years later, over 3,000 years later. What's in it for me? If we are talking about Korah, a story like this won't survive so many years. It won't be part of the Torah that affected humanity for so many years and is still affecting. The point is that I'm not going to discuss Korah as a human being. We're not talking gossip over here. We're talking about what is the lesson that we should take, because here we're talking about how do we make the right choice on one hand, which means we see over here last week's parasha, the spies, this week parasha Koach, people were like the creme de la creme, the top of their society in values, in wisdom, in power, in fame, and they made a deadly decision that basically cost them their lives and many other people's also lives. So this is a story, and the story is again in our day and time. It's like it's all about decision making. How do I know I'm making the right decision? Because I'm looking around and I'm seeing it's so visible. People that they have a background, experience, titles, you just name it. And you listen to them and you tell yourself, I'm not such an expert, but that person is speaking nonsense. How could he do it to himself? He's shaming himself in public. Yes, a lot of people listen to him and they do believe him and they follow his advices, and they make mistakes and they lose a lot of money because of that. Or you're looking at your leaders. It could be the government, it could be in many other places of leadership, or people talking on TV as experts, and they talk complete nonsense. How do you know? Today things happen very fast and everything is archived. And you look at these people that they claim that will never happen and that will happen. And again, they are being found wrong. So who do you listen to? How do you know what's right? So we discussed this issue many, many times. However, I chose one article in the Zohar to start with in order to let us understand one very basic idea that when you study Kabbalah, as you just begin to study Kabbalah, you have to learn one very important rule. And the rule is that the universe is so much more complex and so much broader than our brain and logic can perceive. Never ever think that what you see is what there is. Never ever think that your wits and knowledge and logic can understand this world. And we can see that very clearly. You can see people are really, really talented, really, really good, talented, experienced people making a mistake after a mistake, and their life is a mess. Well, you see other people who are not that smart, they don't have so much background behind them, and they're very, very successful. What is the key for true success? And true success, what does it mean, true success? That A, you have less troubles. B, you enjoy your life. You feel successful. Who cares what other people say about you? If you feel successful, you're successful. If everybody says you're successful and you look at yourself in a mirror, you're saying yourself, you're a cheater and a liar, you're not successful. Okay? And our society, unfortunately, is so full of people that on the outside, it's all about the show, but in the inside, it's all about the lie. And Korah is one of the major stories to learn how to stay on the safe road. And let us begin. So we won't start from the beginning of Parashat Koraḥ in the Zohar. We will skip to um, verse 35. Okay? And verse 35 is quoting um, I think we have a mistake over here. Let me try the verse. Okay, I think it's in our parasha. It's the book of Numbers, chapter 18, verse 23. Chapter 18. Okay. No, it's chapter 18, verse 23. Yes. Ah, the wrong chapter. This is kind of a summary about the job of the Levites. Okay, it says, ועבד הלוי הוא את עבודת אוהל מועד. And the Levite will work him, the work of the tabernacle. והם יישאו עוונם. They will carry the burden of their sin and everlasting law for your generations. חוקת עולם לדורותיכם, ובתוך בני ישראל לא ינחלו נחלה, and amongst the children of Israel they would not have a territory, an asset, a land. Okay, so it's kind of a summary of the whole story because we have to remember Korah, whoever does not know the story, never read it, Korah was a Levite. He was from the tribe of Levi. Levi was the third son of Leah and Jacob. Levi was a very special tribe because they suffered less in Egypt because their faith was stronger than the others. And therefore, Moses, who was a Levite, and Aaron, who was a Levite, they became the leaders, not because they were Levites, but somehow their tribal background brought them up to their position of being so holy, so powerful, and so pure enough to have the merit to carry that mission and vision as the leaders of the Israelites leaving Egypt for 40 years. So let us see what the Zohar is saying. רבי אבא פתח, רבי אבא אופן, היושב על חוג הארץ וגומר תחזה. כד באה קודשה ברכו למברי עלמא, סליק ברעותה קמי וברא לי באורייתא. ובה ישתכלל, הדר דכתיב בהכינו שמיים, שם אני. וכתיב והיה אצלו אמון, והוקמוע אל תקרא אמון, אלא אומן. So, as usually, the Zohar takes another verse, to support the verse we are dealing with. And this verse is talking about the creation in Isaiah chapter 40. Talking about the creator that is above the earth, the round perimeter of the earth, which is kind of an expression in Hebrew. It's hard to translate it into English. And it says, when God came to create the world, he first created the Torah, and he created the world according to the Torah, which means the Torah is carrying the code of every rule of physics, geometry, chemistry, whatever you name it. You know, if you're talking about the founders of the scientific revolution, we're talking about Leibniz and Newton and Da Vinci before them. We're talking about a group of people that really believed that idea. They studied the Zohar and all of them, and they knew that all the secrets of the universe and science are logical and they can be found inside the Torah. Now, it's very easy, by the way, it's very easy. If you just put Leibniz and Kabbalah, Newton and Kabbalah, you get a lot of stuff on Google. It's very easy to find. So I don't have to prove it. You can prove it by yourself, although for many people it sounds very weird. Okay, so God created the Torah as a source, the code, for every rule of the universe. And the universe was built according to these rules. As it is said, and that's another verse in Proverbs 8, Ba'achino shamayim sham ani. When God created the heavens, that's where it is. And then it says, it brings another verse from, again, Proverbs, also chapter 8, where it says, Vayeh etzlo amun, where we learn from that verse, Al tikre amun ela oman, which means the rules for the artwork of the universe are hidden in the Torah. So we're not talking about Korah, we're not talking about the leaders and the spies, we're not talking about private human beings. We are talking about a story that on the outside it looks like a story about private individuals. However, we are talking about universal rules, and therefore we study the story not as a story, but as the story of the whole of the creation. And that's how you study Torah. Verse 36. Kad ate lemivre Adam. Okay. When the Torah came to create Adam, the legend says that the Torah says to God, uh, how could you create Adam? He's going to get you mad. He's going to break the rules. And therefore, why does it say in the Torah that God is merciful and patient? Because why does God need patience? So to be patient with human beings. Okay? Which means, again, it is a secret that says that the rules of this universe have not just, E equal MC square or 1 plus 1 equal 2. There are also rules that say that you can make mistakes. However, what goes around comes around. It never happens immediately. Very rarely you could see the cause and the effect adjacent to each other. Many times it takes many, many, many days, months, years, and sometimes centuries from the cause to the effect, because one thing that the world was created with, it's called mercy. And what does it mean, mercy? Time. There is a space between the cause and the effect. Yes, we all would like to see the villains being punished on the spot. However, we have to remember that the moment we accept that idea, it means that whenever we make a mistake and when we commit a felony, we should accept an immediate punishment. Do we like it? No. Why? Because no one is perfect. Every human being is making mistakes, and every human being is not just transgressing the rules of the Torah and the universe. Many times we hurt other people and we don't want to pay on the spot. Okay? If we paid on the spot, I don't think we would dare get out of bed in the morning because we human beings, we make mistakes. That's what we're good at. And if every time we made a mistake, would be hit on the head immediately, we'll never dare to have any relationships. We'll never dare to have any kind of partnership, anything to do with other people. That means extinction, because humanity is all about interaction with other human beings. So, therefore, the world was created with patience. That's one of the greatest rules of the universe. So at that moment that Adam was created, the Torah says, his face was shining from above to below. And all creatures were in awe of Adam. And there were many, many, many places that explain that stuff, and we already explained many times. If we are talking about Adam, Adam from Adam and Eve, Genesis, the end of chapter 1, Adam, when Adam was created, there are so many legends about the power, the shining, the light. He was tall up to the heaven, and we explained all of these stories are a hint. They hint that somebody tall up to the heavens and shining more than the sun cannot be a physical being. When we are talking about Adam before the sin, it was not a physical being. Same way, the Garden of Eden did not have apples. It doesn't say anywhere. The word apple does not appear in the book of Genesis even once. Okay? Not apples, no oranges. Okay? Only after the sin, you hear about a fig tree. Before that, there were only two trees, the tree of knowledge, tree of life. These are not real trees. They are basically consciousness, a realm of consciousness, frequencies. We are not talking about a garden with physical trees. It's not a physical garden and not a physical trees and not a physical humanity. That was humanity before the sin when we were all one. At that moment, there was no separation. Everything was united. Everything was shining and illuminating. However, we are here to face challenges. And one of the challenges was not to eat from the tree of knowledge. We did eat from the tree of knowledge, and the result was this world that we are part of. And this world is full of pain that did not exist in the Garden of Eden. In the Garden of Eden, we did have challenges, but not in that ugly form that we know today. So, as it says, when Adam was created, he was created in perfection. And then it was the sixth day of the creation, and he was working on perfecting himself on a fast lane, what is called the lane of the Garden of Eden. And that lane led him towards Shabbat. Sorry. And then when Adam was reaching completion, and the day was sanctified, says the Zohar, Venitkadesh, which means Adam was created on the sixth day. Towards the end of the sixth day, Shabbat, the Holy Shabbat, came in to complete the whole creation. That was the time, אז נשלמו עליונים ותחתונים. Then the upper worlds and the lower worlds came to completion. Shnishlemu comes from the root shoresh shalem. That's why we say Shabbat Shalom. It's not Shabbat of peace. Peace is a result of wholeness, completion. When everything is whole and complete, you experience peace. When things are still broken and incomplete, you cannot experience peace. Shabbat, the seventh day, is the day that reminds us the promise of humanity to reach completion. We came from completion, we're on the journey to completion. Once a week, we can experience that completion when we choose that Shabbat will be our life on that day, which means when we choose to be Shabbat, part of Shabbat, on the frequency of Shabbat, to be on the realm of Shabbat, then we can feel the completion of Adam before the sin. We can taste that taste. Why? So we can remember where we came from, and we can also have a goal. Where are we going to? You know, we've been raised in this day and age in a false religion that there's no place for God in that religion. It's a religion of materialism that says God is a nice tradition. It's nice to have some tradition of God, but the real tradition is making money, a lot of money, fame, power, possessions. That is the goal. But if you cannot reach that frequency of shalem, shalom, which is a whole, which is Shabbat, it doesn't matter how much money you have. It doesn't matter how much fame you have. It doesn't matter anything of material that you have. You are not going to experience the secret of true success. It's all about reaching that place of the magic of Shabbat, the magic of completion, the magic of wholenessness. And that frequency is given once a week, and that's called Shabbat. So we remember where we came from and where we are going at, where it's our goal. Verse 37, and that moment when the day of Shabbat is coming in, just at sunset of Friday afternoon. At that time, when we are talking about the original sixth day of the creation, the world was in the middle of, 6 days, not calendar days, but of creativity. There's something that is very important to understand. A lot of stuff was in the middle of its creation. Why? When the world was created, we go back to verse 5 in Genesis 1, okay? And it says there was a night, there was a day, one day. In the beginning, God created the universe in a perfect state of completion. We studied that so many times. What's the problem? When God created us, He created us as His vessels, the vessels for His light. However, His light is eternal and infinite. And therefore, we were created in His image as an impression of our Creator. And therefore, we have the need for independence and liberty, creativity and giving. When everything is perfect, like in verse 5, chapter 1, there's no place for independence and liberty. There's no place for creativity because everything is already complete. And there's no place for giving because no one needs your giving. So God broke that perfection and created the universe that we know, that nothing is perfect. So we can perfect it, and we are in creating. Bread is not growing on the trees. You have to plow the ground, you have to plant the seeds, you have to wait for the harvest, then you have to harvest, and there's a whole story till you get the bread. But you're doing at that moment a tikkun. You create something that it's yours. Yes, God helps you with that, but you have to put your effort in it, okay? And that's even everything that we do 6 days a week. We might forget, with all the mess we're dealing with, that we came from a perfect state and we are heading towards a perfect state. Shabbat once a week is there to remind us who we are, what's our goal. Without it, you can surely go insane. Without Shabbat, in which you recalibrate your goal. Why are we so materialistic? Because most of us do not understand Shabbat. Oh, Shabbat is another day you can make money. It's a day for being on the beach. No, Shabbat is a day to ascend to that place of completion that we want to achieve during the weekdays. But the legend says that when Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat of completion, came, all the friction was interrupted and wholeness was created. But there was some stuff that was not completed yet. But Shabbat came to complete the blemish of the incomplete. And what is a blemish, says the Zohar? That's on the left side. And what is the left side? It could be demons and evil spirits and an evil inclination. All of that was created for us to repair. Shabbat is the frequency of completion and repair. So the Levites, they belong to the incomplete. Why? When we are talking about the symbolism in the Torah is speaking about three kinds of people in the nation of Israel. Kohen, right column, chesed, the power of giving. Levites, left column, judgment. And Israel, central column, the synthesis. Okay? When Shabbat comes in, when Shabbat is ushered in, then all the left side, which is the broken vessel, is coming into completion on Shabbat. So, what is that about us? Because the question is, why are we talking about Korah? Why Korah the Levite? Why? I'm sure there were other people who made mistakes, but the Torah is not bringing everybody's stories, right? Only the stories we can really learn them as an eternal lesson. And how does that happen? In order for the Levites, which they symbolize the left column, the judgment. Now, can a human being live without a left column? Impossible. If you don't breathe in, you cannot breathe out. If you do not receive wisdom, you cannot help others with your experience. If you do not have wealth, you cannot give charity. If you do not have time, you cannot give your time and help somebody else. Okay, if you do not have a body, you cannot use your body to help others. So you cannot create and you cannot find your own independence and liberty. And therefore, the secret is that the left column, the Levite, that aspect of judgment, we need all to have that aspect. However, the Zohar says the secret is you need to basically put the fire, the element of fire in each one of us, under the control of the element of water. The element of fire is the Levite, and the water element is the Kohen. Chesed, loving, kindness, caring and sharing, unconditional love. This is the Kohen. So, and then the world is not blemished. What does that mean? And that's why it says, Va'avad alevi who, and the Levite should serve, work for, what? For its purpose in the tabernacle, but that's under the Kohen. And by this, the Levite is being corrected. Okay, which means, let's translate it into simple language. You can't have anything happen unless you have a need, a desire, lack, pain. The necessity is the mother of all invention, which means without the fire, you don't have the energy to get up and to make money, to learn wisdom, to achieve power, to have experience. You need to have that guts, you need to have that lack, you need to have that drive, and that's called left column or Levi, judgment, fire. It's all different names for the same frequency. Is that bad? No. It's a necessity, however. That part that is called left column, fire, must be serving the right column, which is Kohen, love, water element, chesed, giving, sharing, which is another frequency. Now, a human being, a healthy human being, must develop both sides, the right side and the left side. Water element, fire element, Kohen and Levi, in each human being. It's like you have every electric device, you have the plus and the minus. Without it, it doesn't work. So, in order to complete everything in our lives, You have to develop the Levite, which means the desire, the urge, the need, the fire of excitement, and so on. You have to develop that to its utmost capacity. However, only for one purpose, so it serves the great goal. How can it serve the great goal? When you put in the Kohen, which means be at service. I explained it many times when it says, oh, when you start a new chapter in your life, a new business, a new career, start with the right foot. What do I mean with the right foot? So if I walked into that office with the left foot, I'm doomed? No. The right side is the Kohen, chesed, loving, giving, water element, which means the first thing when you want to be successful and you want to achieve greatness in any capacity, you have to start with how do I use all of that for the purpose of helping, serving others. When I do that authentically, I am making the left column, the Levite in me, serve others, which is the Kohen in me, that urge and need to be at service. And when you do that, ve'avad Levi hu, and the Levite should serve him. Who's him? That is, says the Zohar, this is completing Hishlim. Again, Hishlim, Shalem, Shalom, completing the left column. The left column is important. It's crucial. However, if the left column is standing alone, which means when I focus only about me, myself, and I, which is called selfishness, which is called narcissism, individualism, when you try to just develop the left column, the Levite, on its own, that will be a trouble. Which means when it's all about me and mine and how do I get, which is the Levite, this is doomed. It can never be perfect. So the more you develop the left column, without it, the Levite in me, serving the right column, you are by default on the wrong side of history. And what will be the result? Pain, disaster, failure in every possible way. So what the Zohar is saying, I'm skipping to verse 39. Before that, in verse 38, at the end, the Levites completed something that was missing. What did it mean? In the beginning, when we said that and there was a night, there was a day, one day, there was just bliss. They were just giving. But the point is that everything was frozen. Why? Because if there's just giving, who will receive? If just there's bliss, who can feel the lack and the need? So on the second day, God breaks this completion. And it just breaks apart everything in the world. Read chapter 1 Genesis. So the Levites created that left column, fire, judgment, gevura, but in a way to complete the world. Why? Though for the world to be completed, you need a pure left column, which means a left column that is recognizing that its job is to serve and to be under the right column. Abraham, right column, binding Isaac, the left column. The Kohen is being served by the Levi. The urges, the need, the desire, the lack to achieve greatness, fulfillment, bliss, whatever, that we experience as human beings, there are two ways to achieve completion. One, which is the fake way, and you can find it in many religions that get to the fake place. What does it mean? Deny your desires, subjugate, subdue your desires, uh, which means detach yourself from your desires. So you get an artificial state of wholeness, but you're suppressing. And when you suppress God's creation, the Levite within each one of us, sooner or later, that's going to explode in your face. And you will create a society that on one hand is suppressing the desire to achieve. On the other hand, you will see selfishness being disguised under altruism and so on. That's called hypocrisy. And we can find it in every society on earth, that aspect in which you try to suppress your desires, you feel guilty about desiring, and you don't understand the only way is to kosher your desires, which means let them grow, let them manifest. However, start with the right foot. Serve the Kohen, serve the giving. Find yourself a mission that if you want to have a good life, make sure that other people get also good life. Now, when Korach, who was a great person, however, when he said, what is that I miss? And God will never deny my desires. So I am wise, I am rich, I am respectful, I have everything, but I want more. Ah, I want the power of Moses, the king, and the honor of Aaron, the high priest. Why shouldn't I have it? And what was his mistake? The first word in the parasha, Vayikach, and he took. Korach just wanted to take. He did not serve the Kohen. He did not serve the people. He did not want to be the leader because he wanted to serve the people. He wanted to be the leader because he wanted to control. When you have the left column without it serving the right column, then you are starting to go off course. And how does that called? Agenda, ego, bad ego, selfishness. And then the moment you start to simply go astray from the road, you know, a little change in the beginning is not noticeable. And if you don't realize, sooner or later you find yourself off the road in a ditch. And that's what happened to the spies. That's what happened to Korach. Yes, he wanted, and he said, equality, liberty, okay, fraternity for everyone. He even preached that, and everybody said everybody can be a Kohen. 250 people came and said, we want to be Kohen also. Just a second, few months earlier, you've seen what happened when the two sons of Aaron wanted to be a Kohen. They would die, they were killed by the fire of God because they did it for themselves. They didn't jump with the incense in order to serve the congregation. They just went for themselves. All of these 250. Why is the Torah telling that to us? Because the Torah is saying, let's go back to one of the major stories in Judaism. You have two versions. I'm telling that story many times. One version with Hillel the elder, We're talking about 21st century BC, and one is about Rabbi Akiva, 2nd century CE. And both is about, to make story short, explaining the whole Torah standing on one foot, which means what is the general rule of the whole Torah? Even if I did not study the whole thing, how do I know what is the right direction? And the answer was love others as you love yourself, which means if you find yourself in a place that is judging others, in a place in which you do not want to serve others, but you want to take what they've got because it feels, it imagines that if you have what they have, instead of saying, if I serve what they served, if I put the effort they put, I will get to where they are, instead of trying to covet what belongs to somebody else. And the Zohar have very straight words about it. The Zohar says very clearly, verse 4, כל הרודף אחר שאינו שלו הוא בורח מפניו ולא עוד אלא מה שיש לו לבד ממנו. Whoever is chasing after what doesn't belong to him, whatever he's chasing will run away from him. And more than that, whatever he's got already, he would lose. Korach רדף אחר שאינו שלו. Korach was chasing, pursuing what doesn't belong to him. He lost what he had and didn't get the priesthood. He died. He didn't take with him anything. He simply died. He went straight into purgatory. Why? He awakened, says the Zohar, the left column that was created by God during the 6 days of the creation, so we can complete it. He awakened it because he was Korah, because he was a Levite, because he was such a powerful person. He awakened deliberately that power of judgment, fire, not for the purpose of serving. That is incomplete. When you awaken that power, the Zohar says, you awaken the incompletion of the creation. You just basically go under the stability of the creation. One of that most powerful forces of that instability is an earthquake. And that's why when Korach did what he did, he unstable the earth, and the earth opened its mouth. When Moses is saying, when Korach and his people are coming, and they simply in front of the whole nation, they speak in the name of liberty and equality and justice. And they say, how come, Moses, you're not putting your job for election? Okay? And Moses is saying to God, chapter 16, verse 15. ויחר למשה מאוד. Moses was really upset about it. ויאמר לאדוני, and he says to God, אל תפן מלכתם, do not take their offering. לא חמור אחד מהם נשאתי ולא הראתי את אחד מהם. I never, ever take from them anything. Not a donkey, I never hurt it, neither of them. What's their problem? So he said, you want to be Kohanim? Okay, tomorrow morning, each one of you will bring a tray and you put incense on the tray and you bring the offering. Everybody should know God was going to choose only one priest. What does it mean? All the others are going to die. What made these people go knowing that they have a chance, a very slim chance, only one out of 250, unless God is choosing Aaron and then all 250 will die, not 249. How did they simply logically accept the idea? And the answer that the Torah is going to teach each one of us. If they were so smart, all of them stood on Mount Sinai and they failed. Think about yourself. I should think about myself. How could I be better than they are? Which means, how careful should I be when I go for something and I use the fire of righteousness and ambition and desire and need and so on, I have to take that left column. I do not have to detach myself from it. I have to make it a servant of chesed, of loving kindness. If I get that, I will get everything in the Torah. I will get all the laws of the Torah. If I don't get that, I will never get anything. The purpose is about how do I take the Levi in me, the desire in me, the need, the necessity. How do I make it a servant of the Kohen, of God's giving, of serving other people? That's why we need people. How do I develop that service if I don't have people around me? On the other hand, it's a warning. You could have the Holy Spirit and you can make a mistake so blind and you will fall into the pit, straight into purgatory. You won't even realize what's your mistake. Because if you don't put loving others as you love yourself first, service first, before everything else, you're going to be walking blind in a dark cave without realizing what's going on. You want to see the road, you see the direction, you have to stick to Shabbat. What is Shabbat? It's about family, community, service, serving others, being with others, caring for others, and also about reaching that place of completion, rest, especially the place of shalom, wholeness, which means on one hand, I can develop the fire of desire. On the other hand, I am focusing myself on achieving it as part of my community, my family, being at service, being served, sharing, and being at that place in which I am becoming the Levite, that the Levite by himself is open fire, live wires, dangerous. But when the Levite is basically serving the Kohen, the purpose of giving, being there for others, it becomes a powerhouse. So we look around and we see so many people that are trying to brainwash us on the media, social media, giving us advices. And so many of them are basically selling us some stuff, which is brainwashing, subjugating ourselves using our own weakness of selfishness, individuality. No, we cannot buy that stuff because. So, how do you get that? You have to develop that sense of altruism. On one hand, you have to develop this individualism. But individualism without altruism, it's dead end. It leads you to a dead end. Individualism that is developing itself for the purpose of serving, altruism, love others as you love yourself, That's a win-win. On one hand, you develop your desires, your talent, your calling. On the other hand, you know the only way that can survive is serving the Kohen, serving the purpose of being at service to, some people, if let's say you have a family preparing for Shabbat, okay? I had that a few weeks ago. And then the sewage is coming up, and the whole dining room with the Shabbat tablecloth, everything is flooded. What can I do? So that neighbor, who's also a plumber, that came and find the way to open that place in the drainage. He was like a Kohen Gadol. He came to serve. He saved our Shabbat. He was better than a Kohen. So because he used his talents to serve, to help others. That's why Rabbi Brainwash, the student of Rabbi Ashlag, said, why does it say, and there you will be uh, a kingdom of priests, of Kohanim? There's not enough place in the temple for millions of people. He says, no. When you, as a farmer, as a plumber, as a banker, you take your job as a priestly job, serving, which means I want to be successful so I can serve people better and improve the whole of humanity. This is the goal. But if you want the job just because you want to be powerful, rich, and famous, you are doing the action of Korah. And your destiny will be like Korah. You will put yourself in purgatory while you're still alive. And you see those people that are trying to tell you on the media, TV, politics, and if you really work on yourself, you will feel when people try to basically manipulate you into being a slave instead of serving you. We have to be really careful about it, but it starts with ourselves, because if you don't work on that in yourself, how can you diagnose the disease somebody else? We're in a very, very powerful time in history. We spoke about it last week. When we see about the political transformation, when we see that war with Persia, Iran, and as we read in the Zohar of last week's Parashah, that the fight with Iran, after Iran takes over big part of the Middle East, and after they attack Israel by their proxy Hamas, and you see how the whole world is split. People are saying whatever it means, but supporting Hamas and Iran. And you ask yourself, what did they take? And the answer is, if you are coming from that place of taking, Vaikach Korach, Korach took. The moment you are here to take, you could be blind. You won't see the picture. You want to understand why this person says that the world cannot win against Iran. While Iran, you see that the leadership, they are like Korach. They want the power, they want the wealth, they want other people's countries, and they don't understand how they bring themselves to the pit, deep into the purgatory. Like Korach, walking all the way and falling deep inside. Why? They say the Persians are wise people. They invented chess. They didn't, it's in India, but never mind. They are the masters of negotiation. How could they be so blind? The moment you're not there to serve, you're there for taking other people's lands, good fortune, whatever. you are on the journey to hell. And that's exactly what happens. And if you support that, you probably have the same disease. So we are right now, the whole of humanity, we have to choose. You want to follow Korah and that journey? Wherever you see that, you see destruction. Or you want to create wholeness. What does it mean? I want to be successful so others can be successful too. You have to put real God, loving God, not the God of wars. That's idol worshiping. Believing in a God of hatred, in a God of war, in a God of fight. Yeah, you have to fight for your freedom, but you do that as serving freedom. If it's genuine, you're going to find yourself on the top. And basically, whoever can understand that will understand exactly what's happening in the media, on TV, governments, world politics. It's all about that. Are you following Korah or the spies' direction? Or are you following Moses and Aaron or whatever we talking about over here, the idea that I'm here to be great, successful as God created me, but I need to be at service. First, service to man, humanity. And when I do that, I really serve God by completing his creation. If not, I can awaken all the demons of war, of disasters, earthquakes, what you name it. That's what happens when humans choose the way of Korah. Just me, and only about me. And that destroys economy, that destroys societies. You want to understand what is the problem of humanity? This is where it is. That's you put your finger on the problem. Thank you, and I hope most of you understood it. Good luck because there's a journey still ahead of us to find how to serve without detaching from our desire to set on fire our needs, our desires to grow, and to change the world to improve it. Thank you so much.